People watching my yesterday's video about Lanford Wilson have asked if the man was a saint. Well, of course he wasn't, who is? But I was raised that it behooves one to speak well of the dead. But sure, Lanford was human, as I learned right away when he and Michael Warren Powell moved in with me, and we made an arrangement that there were three of us, and one of us would work each month so the other two could be free to do plays. Well, it happened that they moved in when I was doing The Haunted Host. So they worked for 2 months, theoretically, while I did the play. At the end of 2 months, I was astonished to find an eviction notice on my door. When I showed it to them, they confessed they had not worked at all, but had instead spent the days at the library or on park benches or cadging meals from strangers. And the result was that for many years, I could not get an apartment of my own nor a phone, because of the eviction notice and because of the huge phone bill they left unpaid. So that wasn't pleasant at all. But, you know, one forgave them. Lance could be funny about money in many ways. I once did a lecture at a college in Brooklyn, and backstage afterwards, two kids there said they had just done a student production of Lanford's play Home Free. Well, they were both there, and I said, why don't you do it for me? So for me and a couple of other people who were hanging around backstage, they ran through Home Free. I called Lanford to tell him about it as a charming story, and a couple of days later, the young man involved called me in tears saying that Lanford's agent had called saying she would sue the college if they didn't pay for that backstage run-through of Home Free. That wasn't pleasant. On the other hand, Lanford wound up with an estate in Sag Harbor, and I didn't, so maybe that was just a smart way to be. Once the Dramatists Guild, or some such organization, threw a party for emerging playwrights, so we could meet emerged playwrights. Well, I had just done The Haunted Host off-Broadway, so I was emerging, so I was invited. I realized the moment I got there that I was overdressed for the occasion. I was wearing, for instance, a huge white and black beaded Egyptian necklace by my friend Charles Terrell. And I was the object of some dismay from everyone, so I just went and sat in a corner and sulked. But then I saw Lanford talking with two idols of his and mine, Betty Comden and Adolph Green, the great comic writers. And I ran over to him and grabbed his shoulder and said, "Lanford, hi, introduce me." And he turned and looked at me and turned away as if I wasn't there. Well, I would have understood it if he'd just muttered out of the side of his mouth, "Buzz off, Bob, I'm making it in the big time." But he just ignored me and pretended I wasn't there. And I said, "Okay, well, we know where we stand there." And that would have been that, except that not too long after that, I was walking through Phoebe's bar, and there was Lanford at a table with some people, and he grabbed me and said, "Oh, hi, Bob, hello, hey, how you doing? Come on, sit with us." And I was just so appalled that he would snub me uptown and then behave that way with me on my turf, that for the only time in my life, I clenched my fist, pulled it back, and socked him in the jaw and knocked him to the floor and stormed out. And there things quite possibly would have rested. But later, years later, after Kennedy's Children had hit in Europe, and I was back in America to do it on Broadway, I got a call from my agent that Lanford and Marshall Mason and Michael Warren Powell wanted to have lunch with me. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I went to the lunch, and Lanford and I made up, and everything was fine. And then Marshall revealed that the entire purpose of the lunch had been that Circle Rep wanted to do Kennedy's Children. I said, well, didn't my agent tell you? It's already, the reason I'm back in America is it's already been optioned by a Broadway producer. In fact, we are casting, and we've rented 2 theaters for it. And Marshall just snapped his fingers and said, check, and the 3 of them left. So I kind of thought I knew where that stood. But then opening night at the Golden Theater, where Lanford himself had had a great big flop, I received from Lanford a huge bowl of golden orchids saying he hoped they'd break the curse of the Golden Theater. So I forgave him. I think everybody forgave him. Probably one of the problems in his life, as well as one of the assets. What else? When Boys in the Band first popped up, Lanford, who was known as the author of the first gay play, The Madness of Lady Bright, was called by a paper and asked how he felt about it. and he hadn't seen it but wasn't about to pass up the chance to get his name in print. So he claimed he had seen it, and what's more, he claimed I had gone with him, which was a blatant lie. And he said he liked it okay, but that I had, in his phrase, wept buckets. We got some laughs at that. Another time, Lanford was being interviewed and for some reason asked if he could use my apartment. I don't know why. And I said sure, and he asked if I could clear out, and what's more, if I could take down any gay pictures I might have. I said, oh, okay, so I did. And he brought with him Zita Litvinos, the beautiful, brilliant, witty actress friend, to pretend to be his girlfriend. And in the interview, Zita got off a couple of good ones like, oh yes, Lanford has every reason to know what a woman wants in a man. But those are, those are jokes on the establishment. Lanford, I guess you could say it was an unpleasant side of his personality, sort of thought everybody felt as he did about everything and knew what he did and had his standards. Solipsistic, I think it's called. I took Lanford and Michael Warren Powell to their first trip to the Everard Baths in New York, where men had anonymous sex orgies. They didn't like it much, and it developed that Lanford was very competitive in this area and preferred to pick out beautiful men and win them, to score by winning them, especially by winning them from somebody else. Well, I'm not like that, and I love the baths, but Lanford insisted that I didn't really like the baths, that I was just too shy or inexperienced to win men. Well, I won plenty of men, and I just let it go. But then one time, we were walking down the street, and we ran into the poet Gerard Malanga, Andy Warhol's presumed lover, whom we both knew very slightly, and we stopped and chatted with him on the street. And when it was time for us to part, Lanford, speaking to him but looking sharply at me as if to say, I'm teaching you a lesson, said, sure, Gerard, come on over. You come over to the house sometime, and I'll read you my new play, and we can sleep together. And I thought that was endearing. Once, when Kennedy's Children was done out in Sag Harbor, Lanford asked me to his home afterwards, and I got there, and there were a whole bunch of people I didn't know, to none of whom I was introduced. It was a very strange evening. I just stood there, and everyone ignored me, and I couldn't decide if I was overdressed again and Lanford was shunning me, or if he had just reached the point. He was surrounded by people who adored him and made their living off of him and just catered to his every whim. If he had just reached the point where he thought everybody he knew everybody, and his world was everyone's world, I don't know. He was always charming. Maybe that was not as good for him as it might have been, but it was pretty good for him. I prefer to remember the Lanford that I roomed with. Specimen story. I value a wisecrack more than anything. Lanford admired me, as many people did at that time, for my encyclopedic memory for who was in what play and movie and when they were released and who directed them and wrote them. My memory was thought to be flawless. It isn't now, by any means. But at that time, I was considered quite a marvel for this. And then one night, I made my first mistake. I attributed Pat Hingle to the wrong production of The Long Day's Journey into the Night. And I was shocked, and Lanford was shocked, and Michael was shocked. And I went into my room and sat on my bed and just gazed into space in dismay. And Lanford came in and sat down on the bed with me, put his hand on my shoulder, and said, "Oh, come on in, Bob. The wrong is fine." I loved him. I miss him. I will always love him and always miss him.